welcome.
So we wanted to, before we hit the click, we wanted to just start off with a moment of humor that when Mike and I first got together to think about whether or not we wanted to add something about student engagement and sort of where we were, this was the moment. This we thought captured the moment, and we wanted to start you off with a laugh, and then we'll get into the serious work that we came here to do.
Oh, hey, Nancy.
Hey, Lizzie, it's Kim.
Thanks, Frank. Man, have you heard about this school thing?
What are you guys doing about school?
Have you guys made a decision yet?
Hey, you ear hugs. What are you guys doing about school?
This is just so hard, right? It's like, yeah, right? We're definitely sending them. We're definitely doing virtual.
We may do the hybrid option.
You know, Frank, we're still weighing the options. I know everyone's going through the same thing, but it's like, we're trying to solve a puzzle blindfolded. So no. You can opt in, but you can't go out. But if you're out, you can't go in. But there's an early out, late in opt clause that we may opt for.
I think we're going to sign up for C, but then we can downshift to B. But if we sign up for A, maybe?
I hear the Smiths are hiring a teacher and splitting it 7 ways. Thanks for the invite, neighbors. We're going to turn the dining room into like a homeschool haven. What if this is the year we just get in an RV and just travel the world? Let the world be our classroom. We'd have to empty that every day? Oh, no. I mean, my husband definitely would never do that. So, and I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry I'm getting emotional. It's so hard right now. And I'm just feeling everything.
I'm just worried they're going to fall behind.
You know what? Just making it through is enough. I have such low expectations for any actual learning. I am barely holding on over here. I mean, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I know.
I'm just stocking up for the school year. Can never be too prepared, am I right?
Things are changing minute by minute every single day. It's like something new. It's just like, I gotta check the news. Oh, I know you have deliveries. What's your neighbor doing? Your sister's a teacher, right? How's she feeling? Hey, Frank, I know you don't have kids, but if you did. That's a good point. You know, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Do you think your kids are going to be able to wear a mask all day? Do you think your kids are going to be able to sit in front of a computer all day? Do you think you can have the kids ride around with you for a day, like a field trip all day? They're really strong. They can lift boxes. I mean, kind of. You do you, but with my kids. Hey, maybe we could co-op, like trade off days at our houses. It must be so hard to be a teacher right now. You should consider running for the school board, or at least start a blog. So what are you guys gonna do? So what's your school decision? Just tell me what to do, Frank. You are such a good listener. And that's the decision. We're just gonna make the decision, and we're just gonna stick with it unless we don't want to, and then we pivot, and that's a good lesson too, right? You make the decision, it's not the right one, and then you pivot and you change, and then that's just what you do, right? Right? Right. I knew you would agree with me. Love you. Praise hands, emojis to the teachers and the administrators trying to make this work, and to the parents. I feel you. And whatever decision you make is the right one. PC, what do you want to do? Do you want to go back to school, or do you want to go virtual like we were at the end of last school year?
I want to go back to school, but I don't want to go back to school. Do you get what I mean? I want to go back to school, but for health reasons, I kind of do.
Exactly.
Do you get what I mean?
One good part of online schooling.
Oh, hey, Nancy.
Hey, Lizzie, it's Kim.
So that's where we were when we started this work.
Thank you all for that. I think a little bit of humor is much needed as we are entering what is December, which feels like we've probably been doing distance or hybrid or some type of mixture of all of them for a decade now, but it's only been several months, right? And our parents, I think, were very much feeling that energy entering this school year, and I think still are feeling that energy every morning as they're getting their children on the bus or getting their children on to the dining room table to go to school, right? So knowing that's where our parents are, knowing that they are a big stakeholder in the learning that we want to happen in our schools, we want to make sure that we are always thinking about our students and our families as we're making decisions for our schools. So as was talked about, my name is Mike Miele, and I'm an educational strategy specialist and a senior partner at the Highlander Institute, where I work with schools and districts around the country, really kind of on school change, as well as building best practices for personalized learning. One of the districts that I support, as I help Susan in supporting I believe 15 diocesan schools in Providence, Rhode Island, 2 being high school and the rest being K-8 school, or pre-K-8 schools. So working with them this year, we had a very different challenge that we were looking to overcome, which is not only what was the best choice for students, but how do we continue supporting our students, families, and teachers through this year? And as well as like, how do we think about what's going to come next after that? I'm joined today by Susan Morrissey, so I'll let her introduce herself.
Yeah, so my name is Susan Morrissey. I've now figured out to mute Hoppin, and we are good to go. I am the Associate Superintendent of Catholic Schools for Curriculum and Instruction for the Diocese of Providence. I have the really good fortune of working with Superintendent Dan Ferris, who is an awesome boss and allows for a lot of creative thinking. This is the first year that Mike and I have partnered up. We kind of came together during the time of COVID, where we had a lot of online instruction to figure out, and how is it going to work, and how could we help, and what kind of teacher training could we do. And then as Mike and I started to do this work, we realized that we had a lot of things in common, actually, that although we are, in many ways, our strengths lie in different areas, our vision for sort of where we hope that schools will go for the future and for the needs of our students, I think we sort of came into alignment and have become really good partners in this way in supporting the work with each other. And we wanted to share that with you today, and we're really grateful that you're here.
So can everyone hear me now? Someone said there was a little bit of trouble hearing me. Is this better? Perfect.
I can hear you okay. Yes.
Wonderful. So we're going to start with a quick kind of activity of using a Jamboard, which is linked here on slide 4. I'll also throw that in the chat for those of you who want to participate. If you click that link, it will open up the Jamboard. And for those of you who have not used Jamboard before, it is a virtual whiteboard tool through the Google platform. I like to think of it as, if we think back to our classroom, those large white sticky note papers that students write little sticky notes on and write all over. It's basically a tool that will do that. It's going a little slow because I think for me, the Hopin and the Zoom are taking a lot of my bandwidth, but here it is now. We're going to use the sticky note here on the left-hand side, the 4th one down. And what we're going to ask you to do is think about, what do schools do? And our goal today is to ask you to think beyond the obvious answer, right? Like, what do schools do? They do arithmetic, they do writing, right? We know they do that, but thinking of like, what is true of your school? What are the values and the skills that you want your students to leave with when they exit your building at the end of 5, 8, 12 years, however long they're with your school community for? What do we want those values to be? You're going to just type your answer using the sticky note feature here. I'm just going to throw a hi, hit save, hit cancel, and then you're able to kind of move your sticky note all over the page. And we'll share this back with you at the end as well, so you can kind of hear everybody else's thoughts. I'm going to throw this directly in our chat right now. But we're going to pause for maybe a few minutes just for some people to quickly participate.
Yeah, I think this ties back to if those of you who watched Tony Wagner this morning talking about sort of the reinvention of schools and innovation and what this means, and talking about future workplace, right? And what are we preparing kids for? Like, what's the ultimate objective? Not like the daily objective or the practical objective, but like, we know if schools were created really sort of in preparation for the jobs of the factory workers, or when we first started public schools, you sort of had different tiers, right, of what you were trying to do. This is sort of like, if you were like blue skying it for the future, the best that you can imagine it, what do you think that schools are designed to do now? Or what should they be designed to do?
I'm seeing a lot of great thoughts populating this page right now about lifelong learners, about preparing students to be global citizens or cyber citizens. I think I saw both of those on there. being productive members of society. Really great stuff here. So maybe another minute or so for people to share ideas. I see some people are still hopping in, so keep throwing those ideas in there for another minute or so.
Interesting. I also wonder if in the chat, has your perspective changed due to COVID? Like now that we've gone into this COVID era, if you could give me a why, if it's changed, or if you've always felt this way, just don't respond. But if your vision of schools has changed since COVID, I'd be curious if you type a why if you agree. That's a good idea.
So there's a lot of brain power in this room, global brain power of how different educational leaders are really tackling this challenge of what schools do and really defining that for their communities and sharing that with us right now. I know there's a lot of thoughts on this page, so some people have been asking to create a second page. If you click at the top, if you're feeling like this is too tight, and click on page 2, you can also add ideas there if you're feeling like this page is getting a little too cramped, because there are about 45 of us working on this together right now. But I think we're gonna give about 1 more minute. If you've already finished sharing your idea, please read what the other people are saying. Like I said, there's a lot of really great brain energy and thought power in this room that we definitely want to harness, because we are all in this together right now. No one has done this before. No one's taught through a pandemic that's alive anyway right now, right? So I think that's the piece that we want to be thinking about, that this is all new for all of us, but really kind of sharing that when we're thinking with each other today. See, there's somebody who's organizing this right now in a very, very nice way. I appreciate whoever that person is.
It's interesting that there's a lot of yellow too, actually. I guess that must be the primary color that it comes up on, but I wondered if it was like a happy message of sort of, this is what we're hoping for schools. I think that's interesting. All right, shall we keep going, Mike?
I think, yeah, let's keep diving on in. I love these thoughts that are here. And like
They're
I said,
amazing.
all our material will be shared with you after the session. So if you want to look through what other people are saying, definitely do so. I'm going to go back into our slideshow. I'm going to close my Jamboard now. I'm going to jump back into our slides. So I think the question that what we're going to attempt to answer today, Susan and I, is it time to rethink the model, right? So knowing that when for us in Rhode Island on March 13th, everything changed, and we were placed, some baptism by fire, if you will, placed into a distance learning model in Rhode Island. And I think for a lot of our schools, it really made us think about what is school, like what does school do, and what does it look like for our stakeholders, our families, our teachers, our students, and how and why should we be rethinking this as we move forward into this new school year?
Well, and before we jump right into design thinking, I'd just like to say one thing, and then we can talk about this. I think that we saw the silver lining, those of us who were not in the building, Yes, we had a lot of COVID-related safety things to think about and share and that kind of thing. But those of us who weren't in the building, I think, had an easier time taking a look at the current situation and seeing the promise in it. There was a lot of hope for what schools can be, and that we've needed change for quite a long time, and that this suddenly was like, even though it was a mess, sort of, in a sense, because there were so many things to be solved and to be figured out, and it was so urgent. But for us, I think, who are not in the immediacy of sort of the trenches, we were able to see that, you know what, here's a moment where we can really reconsider. Are we on the path that we really think is the best path for our students? And that's where design thinking really comes in for us. As we were sort of processing, how do we help people to begin to think about, I know many of you came to the design thinking workshop last year for NEASC, and so you're probably very familiar with this. We just put it up so that you have some idea. I know IDEO gets credit mainly for actually naming this process, but it's a process that happened globally and over time, and with many very creative minds, actually. But this is one process, and we kind of distilled it for you, I hope, as a school, so that you can start to think, if you want to start to see the silver lining and you want to start processing, as Mike and I were thinking about, schools being designed for obviously higher level ed and so on, but then really for the workplace, and the workplace is fundamentally changed by COVID, where we now understand that you can have effective work happening at home. It will probably shape the future in ways that we never expected to see. And so then we started working with schools to come up with what would the process look like for rethinking what we're doing. Although we did find we intended to actually get much further than we actually got, because we weren't mired down by those things that the schools and the teachers were really struggling with. And so we're doing this work, but it's happening a little bit slower than we thought it might. So don't get discouraged if you're like, hey, we're thinking about this work, but we're not knee deep in it yet. I think that's okay. I think the biggest message here is the promise of what we can do for the future right now, and that this gives us a chance to stop and rethink. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about the process?
Yeah, so I think, and I really appreciate Susan being very transparent, that we thought and we're hoping to be a lot further in this process. And I think when we were planning this work back in June, July, we didn't think about the barriers that would be there, such as we order computers on July 1st, and we're getting them December 31st, right? Or teachers being out and students being out and shifting classrooms to distance learning. So all of these realities are also the things that I think are that may have slowed down the process a little bit. But I think it's through those kind of challenges that a lot of growth is coming, and really pushing our teachers and our schools to rethink what it means, what teaching and learning can look like. So really just a really high level view of what is the design thinking process is really looking at redesign through the lens of empathy, by building an understanding with the family and communities that you're working with in your building, working together to leverage voices to define a problem, brainstorming possible solutions to that problem with your community, your design team, or this group of people that is doing that work, developing some type of prototype or strategy that you're going to try within your building to scale eventually, and then always testing, engaging in that continuous improvement, short improvement cycles, so that way that you can see what's working, what's not. What do I want to move forward with? What do I want to scale across my building? What do I want to go back to the drawing board, because you know what, on paper this looked great, but in reality it's not quite working the way we want to, right? So one thing to call it that, even though this is a very beautiful linear image, it's probably more like a circle in reality than actually a start to finish, right? It's not like, oop, I'm on the orange today, I've made it to the end. Nope, when I get to the orange, I may have to go back to my blue or to my yellow at many different points.
So for the meeting, we thought we would simplify. We have 1 hour, so we wanted to achieve a few things and leave you feeling like, you kind of have, rather than having the entire set of steps necessarily to look at, the first 3 seemed to kind of be the key to us. And we broke them down to the who, the why, and the how. And these are sort of the three pieces that we're going to cover today, are the who, the why, the how, and then we'll end with kind of what we think about the virtual classroom and the face-to-face classroom, to give you sort of, in talking with many schools and many different school leaders and teachers, sort of where we arrived. So this just lays it out for you a little bit.
So let's dive into the who. So who are the people that we're bringing to the table to have this discussion, right? And how are we gathering information from our community, our school community, to know both the positives, those bright spots that are happening, as well as the barriers that are coming up, right? So one way that we're tackling this is through establishing feedback loops, working with schools to develop surveys that can be given to parents and students throughout the year to see what's working, what's not working, giving feedback surveys to teachers to see what is going well and what supports they need from admin or from coaches to kind of get to where they need to be. And yep.
I was just going to say, as we were talking about this last night, it sort of occurred to me, it's a lot like sort of running a project-based learning classroom, right? And you have a little bit of chicken and egg where you want for the ideas to bubble up from your community, but you also have to sort of frame some of it so that the actual conversations and the people can get together. So, you know, whether you're thinking about it like, you know, you're sort of like building the parameters of the garden and you know, you've got the climate that you've got and that kind of thing, but then really thinking and figuring out sort of how many people can you include and what are you looking at in terms of evidence for what's true about where you are and where you want to go. These are really important things.
Definitely. I think, and one thing we know as building leaders, whether we're building leaders or district leaders, is that we are always looking at that bigger picture, right? But when things come from the top down, they don't always land, even if it's what's best for kids, right? We also know from when we were back in the classroom for some of us that you can do really awesome stuff in your classroom, but it's really hard sometimes to get beyond that classroom door. So when we're thinking about leveraging voices in our community, we want that grassroots feel of the classroom teacher, of the parents, of the students, if that makes sense, as well as that building leader who's bought in, who's going to help lead, who's going to help kind of knock down barriers that come if they can to kind of do this work. And I think the other piece to always think about with this work is that we have teachers that are at the table. We have building leaders at the table, right? We also want to make sure that we're pulling in families to the table as well, right? Because one thing we've learned for sure through COVID, through distance learning, is that the family is the first teacher, right, for the child, but also they are still a support. They are still a connection of our classroom. So hearing from them what works, what doesn't work is a really important part of this process. And in some cases, if you can, thinking about the middle schools I work with and the high schools I work with, having those students come to the table either through surveys, focus groups, or literally having students sit at the table with adults to have these conversations about this is what's not working for us at school. We are not engaged because of blank, or we are engaged because of blank. One of my schools, the students were like, we're not engaged in this work that you're giving us for homework because the books that we're reading, the people in the book look nothing like us. Their experience is nothing like the experience we're having. So if you want us to be engaged in our learning, you need to pick material that's reflective of us, right? And that's what's come out of this process.
I also think from the design thinking perspective, the idea is really to, you know, sort of focus on the customer, if you will, in that way of thinking, if you're thinking about business. But in our case, it's really about thinking about the students and the families and what are the objectives that we're really trying to serve them, you know, to serve their needs. And part of this is about understanding really deeply what those needs are. And I think part of our job as educators, which is a bit more complicated now that the change process is exponentially faster with technology, is being able to look ahead. So, you know, it's not, I know no one wants to do things the way they've always been done, but we really need to be looking forward and listening to people, professionals who are out in the field, who are giving us data on sort of, these are the positions that are being created, this is what we're looking to, this is the kind of skill set that we're hiring right now, and bringing that in so that we can create something that's really meaningful for our students and our families. Especially, I would say, as independent schools where you're paying tuition, I think I call that out only because we have to be very, very clear about what our messaging is around our strengths.
So now that we have the people at the table, we've gathered from our family voices, from our student voice, from our teacher voice, we have all of this data now to look at, right? All this anecdotal data, all of this balanced data from our families and our communities. What do we do with that, right? So what is, and thinking of, we don't necessarily want to go back to March 12th, right? Which for us in Rhode Island was the last day of the before the 13th hit and the world shut down in Rhode Island. We don't necessarily want to go back there. There's pieces that were good that we want to bring forward, but there's pieces that we kind of think it may be the time to drop a little bit and rethink about what school does for our students so we can get them ready for the world that is out there now, and also thinking of the world that will be there in 10, 15, 20 years.
So I looked at a lot of different videos, a lot of different clips, trying to find what could I use that would best describe the moment that I think we're in and what we need to learn in terms of innovation and in terms of being creative and doing great design work. Simon Sinek has a video that we're going to show in a minute. We're just going to show one clip of it, but I think it's a really, really useful picture and analogy that you'll be able to take back to your teams.
And destination reward. Imagine we're standing in a big empty room, right? And we're standing in one corner, and I give you a simple instruction. I want you to go to that corner in a straight line, right? Off you go, no big deal, right? Without telling you, I slip a chair in front of you. What do? You go around the chair. Now you just disobeyed what I told you to do. I told you to go to that corner straight line. But this is the amazing things about human beings, which is when we're given a clear destination, we use our own creativity and our own sense of innovation and our own problem-solving abilities to overcome obstacles to get to the destination. In other words, the destination is more important than the route, right? We're flexible about the route. We're obsessed with the destination. Reset. We're standing in the corner together, and I give you a simple instruction. Go somewhere in this room in a straight line. And you say to me, well, where do you want me to go? I'm like, I don't know. You're smart. Figure it out. Go in a straight line. And so you pick a point, and you start walking. And without telling you, I put a chair in front of you. And what do? You come to a grinding halt. I say, what'd you stop for? You go, well, you put a chair in front of me. Or you'll make a sudden turn and go in another direction, right? And this is the problem. It's the same obstacle. The difference is when you have a clear destination, the obstacles become easy to overcome. When you don't have a clear destination, you keep coming to a grinding halt. And what we do in our companies is we're counting the steps we're taking along the route, but we're never looking at the destination, right? So company says, made $1 million this year. We were only planning on making 800,000. Like we took 10 steps. We're only planning on taking 8. Where are you going? No clue, right? We count the steps. And so the point is that people want to feel that the effort that they're exerting actually are moving somewhere. And so successful measurement, successful recognition is not just for the steps you take. It's not just for the effort. It's that the effort you exerted moved us closer to where we're trying to get to. And that get to should be some crazy ideal. My ideal is to live in a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning, inspired to go to work and fulfilled by the work that they do. And the couple of measurements that I use are if the book is selling, and by the way, people ask me, how many have you sold? I have no clue. I've never asked the publisher because I don't care. I really don't care how many I've sold. What I care about is the Amazon rankings and that those are going steady or up and not plummeting, because that means other people, right? Because I don't have a publicist, I don't have a marketing strategy on purpose. I didn't hire one of those companies to sell the book for me. And the reason is because I'm not interested in book sales. I'm interested in the spreading of an idea. And so I just use that as a metric to help me understand, am I sort of marching because the more I preach, is it resonating? And so you have a couple of these imperfect measurements that help you understand, are you going along the way? So it's not just great effort, look what you achieved, because that's what we're doing now, right? Our goal is to increase top line revenues by $50 million. For what reason, right? Which is we have to know the destination, and then we say, amazing. You took us that much closer. And if we go to the right, it's because we were overcoming an obstacle. If we hadn't gone to the right, we would have been stuck forever. Thank you. You know, it's not always straight lines. It's not always straight lines, but it's in one direction. She's pulling the cane out. Thank you very, very much. Measurement and destination reward. Imagine.
So I think what always comes to mind when I hear that story is in A Bug's Life. I think back to that movie that came out early 90s, right? The ants are marching, a leaf falls down in front of the ant, and they just scream, "We're lost," right? Because they don't know how to get around the leaf, right? For us, the leaf that's fallen from the tree or the chair is this new way of teaching and learning, right? We don't know in some ways how to get around it because sometimes we haven't defined where we're going yet, right? And I think when I think back to the first video we watched, the mother was saying that it feels like I'm putting together a puzzle without an image, right? And we are definitely putting together a puzzle without the image. But there's a great artist that I saw on Instagram who takes puzzles and puts them together, and will do like the head of a lion with the body of like a whale, because the pieces, even though they're from different puzzles, fit together. And I think that is the power of the choice of how we're doing this work moving forward, right? Is that we have some really great pieces of what worked before everything stopped, right? The values that our school community really values, the image and the piece that we play in our community, right? On the other side, we have what's out there, what's coming tomorrow that we don't know yet, what skills and strategies that we want to really teach our kids, right? We know that AI is coming, right? We know that technology is going to do a lot more of the jobs that people are currently doing now. But the jobs they can't do is they can't think critically. They can't, I think we talked about writing novels, right? Those are the things that we want to reinforce in our students. So those are the other pieces of the puzzle that we're going to put together. So we may end up with the head of a lion and the body of a monkey or a whale, but that's okay because it's a new image, and we have to get our people there, right? We have to have a very clear, like, this is where we're going, and we're going to this corner of the room, or this is our North Star, because this is what you have told us as a community of, like, this is what you value, this is what is working, this is what is not working. And as a community, we're going to get to what's working and make it better. And also we're going to address what's not working and see if we can make that better too, so that we can really design a school community that is going to be reflective of not just what we think as building leaders, but also what we think, what our students think, what our families think, and what our teachers think.
I also think that whole question about what are schools for that we were doing earlier, that having that conversation so that that is your North Star, or that is the direction that you're all aiming in. And then really trusting your people that when that chair is in their way, that they will find their way back to what is this school for? Like, what are we really aiming for? And I think the value of a school is that we have so much natural intelligence among the group, but sometimes we don't empower it. If we don't give it direction, then sometimes it's not utilized in the best possible way. So really talking about that why and defining that why together is very important, so that then you can really maximize kind of their opportunity to go around the chair, and that you're going to trust them to go around the chair because they know where they're going when they get out from behind it. And I think you'll be surprised sometimes by how ingenious their solutions may actually come out to be in moving forward toward that goal.
So our hope right now, so we are about 20 minutes left of our session, Susan. So I'm not sure if we want to do the breakout room now, or we want to go into the how and then to just a big breakout towards the end. What do you think would be better?
Let's do this one. I think this is an important one.
Perfect. So we're going to break out into small groups in a bit. When we go into breakout rooms, I will stop the recording because it will only record the main room, which will just be me sitting here by myself, which will not be fun for anybody. And we're going to just discuss kind of the first two pieces we talked about. I'm not sure if you want to frame it, Susan, because I think you frame it better than I do.
So yeah, I mean, I think I would love for you all to talk a little bit about your who, why, like how are you dealing with that in your school? Have you started that work? Have you considered that work? What are the steps that you're taking, or what are you processing in terms of, do you want to do this work right now? Do you feel like you can? And if you can't do it right now, when would a good time be to do it? So I think it's a useful conversation for people to have.
Great. So I'm going to pause our recording. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to open up some breakout rooms to just have that discussion of the who and the why for your community. We're only going to break for about, let's say, maybe 7 minutes or so. That way we have time to come back together and wrap it up. But I'm going to open up our breakout rooms. I'm going to randomly assign people to the rooms. So about 4 people per room. All right, I'm going to create. You should get something on your screen that invites you into the room. Just click that invite button. If you have any questions, I will be able to hop from room to room and help you out. All right, I'm opening our rooms now. I'll see you all back here at 12:20.
Hi, everybody. Do you mind turning on your camera and your microphone?
Hi, I don't mind the microphone if it's all right.
Oh, that's fine. Totally fine. So tell me a little bit about what's happening at your schools.
I came in a little bit late. Are we? We're talking about the why, looking at our why, right?
Yeah. So your who and your why, and sort of the process, if any, that you've started on. You know, if you're doing a redesign or you're taking this moment to really consider, you know, like we probably can't go back to February 2020 ever. So then what does that look like in terms of process at your school? And have you done some of this work in getting people together to talk about it and what the ultimate goals are and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, just a little bit of background information. We're an international school in Qatar, where we have there's a broad brush, 2 groups that we have in our classes of kids. There's the local population and then the expats, and the expats are all mixed. And what we're seeing right now, and we're asking this question maybe out of desperation right now, but but it's probably leading to somewhere good, is, well, how do we, a lot of the local kids are not connecting online. They're not attending, they're missing a lot of school, and that has been exacerbated in an enormous way by what we're going through. And so they're falling behind 3, 4, 5 years in terms of reading levels, in terms of math ability, and so on. And a lot of them are going to still have a lot of financial wealth and stability anyway. And so we're asking ourselves, well, what on earth are we doing and why are we doing it? And how are we supporting these kids? And what can we do better? And it's, like I said, coming from a desperate place at the moment, but I think the answers that are starting to come up are powerful.
Right, hopeful almost, right, in a strange way, the silver lining in this thing. What about the kids' voices? Are you making room for that too?
So I'm coming from a perspective of sort of NLP and coaching and this kind of thing, and I'm trying to bring that into the conversation to say, well, why don't we sit these kids down and find out what their intrinsic motivations are, because the extrinsic isn't working anymore, and it doesn't matter as much to them as to the other kids. So we are talking about, well, how can we get the students' voices in here? So yeah, but it's still at the phase of, we're just talking about it right now. We haven't quite gotten to actually doing it in this sense.
Yes.
In terms of why, yeah.
Anyone else want to share?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, Melissa.
Yep.
It's so terrible in this office, but I think for us, we've had to really embrace technology in a way we haven't had to before. And so a lot of our training, and also embracing the social emotional health and well-being of our students. And so a lot of what we're doing for now and for the future is really making sure that our staff and our students are technologically literate in a way that we've never had to be before.
Right.
So preparing our staff to deal with what our students are going through, and how to still teach them, and how to nurture our students in the world that we exist in. And I'm just, we all kind of understand that even if we can go back to the way school has been, really there's no reason to. We have to start looking forward and looking at what can we take with us as we're moving forward. And so really we spend a lot of time preparing our teachers and our staff to be technologically literate, to train constantly, and to receive lots of professional learning around social emotional learning, for students to just really be prepared to take a lot of this with us and beyond our current existence.
Are you finding the teachers open to a lot of training? Like, so one of the surprises, I think, in working with my group of teachers is that they want help, they want support, and they want to learn, but they're also under an incredible amount of stress and are having a hard time doing so.
Yes, so teachers, they're absolutely open to it, but it is so overwhelming. It's so much to know.
Yeah.
But they are open, and they're training, they're self-directing a lot of their learning. And so we provide the opportunity and the support, but it is overwhelming. So I'm seeing both ends that, you know, you want to learn absolutely, because you know, when we all shut down in the spring, it was with kind of blind shutdown. We had no clue what we're doing. So you don't want to be in that place anymore. So teachers, they want to learn, they're trying, but it's definitely overwhelming, and it's always something new to learn. And then how do you take this new thing and then give it to our students in a way that's going to engage them? Because that's another thing that we're having issues with. How do we engage our students? And so taking our learning and applying it in a way that's going to keep our students engaged. And that's a whole other battle.
Well, and I think, I don't know about your experience, but we're finding that like now is a great time to talk about the future, because we are actually rethinking everything, but people also feel like their bandwidth for conversations about beyond the immediate challenges is really difficult. Really difficult in our experience anyway. And so this work has been slower than I think we initially thought when we started out the summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also found, I don't know if you caught the beginning video, but the one about the parent kind of stressing out about distance learning or not distance learning, or, you know, whatever. And then I think what we found was that there was actually a lot of that same kind of anxiety or uncertainty in our faculty as well. And we're still dealing with that, you know, where faculty really want to serve the students to the best possible of their ability, but then they also are sort of concerned for what does it look like, and like, are all these safety measures are necessary, but then they're also interfering with the process. And it's been very interesting for us to try to kind of figure out how do we tame that to get to a more productive place.
Absolutely. And it hasn't stopped. Day to day, it's the same anxiety, hasn't gone away.
Right. And you just want to give everybody a big hug and say, I mean, of course you can't, but and say that it will be okay. But it's really interesting. And then at the same time, you're like, do give your voice, because you can shape what it will look like.
Absolutely.
Right. Shall we return to our main session now?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.